Sullivan's Crossing Season 4 did not need a finale that screamed for attention. It needed a finale that reminded people why they cared about this show in the first place. And honestly, episode 10 did exactly that. Because after a season where a lot of viewers felt the story became scattered, emotionally uneven, or too isolated inside separate character bubbles, this finale finally pulled everything back together and said something very simple. This story still works best when the crossing feels like a real community. Hey, what's up everyone? Come back to Breakdown Insight. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Now, today, we are breaking down Sullivan's Crossing Season 4, Episode 10, because I really do think this finale matters beyond just wrapping up a season. It had to do something much harder than deliver one big emotional moment. It had to restore faith in the identity of the show itself. It had to remind viewers that Sullivan's Crossing is not only about romance, not only about emotional confusion, and not only about who ends up with who. It is about connection, growth, healing, and the quiet power of people finding their way back to each other, and in my opinion, that is why this finale works. Let's start with the biggest thing it fixes right away, the sense of disconnection that hung over so much of Season 4. For a lot of the season, characters often felt like they were living in separate emotional ecosystems. Maggie had her tension, Cal had his distance, Liam had his unresolved presence. Other supporting characters had their own isolated material. And while all of that may have made sense scene to scene, the larger emotional rhythm of the season sometimes lost that community warmth the show used to thrive on. Episode 10 changes that almost immediately. People interact again. The crossing feels alive again. Different storylines stop feeling like separate islands and start feeling like parts of one larger emotional space. That matters more than people realize, because Sullivan's Crossing lives or dies by atmosphere. If the town feels emotionally connected, the whole show feels stronger. If the town feels fragmented, everything starts feeling colder. This finale understood that. It brought people back into each other's orbit, and in doing so brought the show back to itself. Now, let's talk about Maggie, because this is one of the strongest episodes for her in a long time. Season 4 has put her through a lot emotionally, but the most important thing about her journey was never really the simple question of Cal versus Liam. That may have been the visible shape of the conflict, but the deeper issue was always Maggie herself. Could she trust her own instincts? Could she stop living in hesitation? Could she stop carrying the weight of every past chapter and finally step into a future without apologizing for wanting it? That is what the finale gives her. What I liked most is that the episode does not frame Maggie's progress as some magical moment where all confusion disappears at once. It feels more grounded than that. She does not suddenly become a different person. She becomes a clearer one, more certain, more willing to take responsibility for where she wants her life to go. And in my opinion, that is the most satisfying kind of growth, not dramatic transformation, for the sake of drama, actual emotional movement. She spends so much of the season processing old feelings, old obligations, old pain. And by the finale, it finally feels like she understands that moving forward is not betrayal. It is not selfishness. It is necessary. That may sound simple, but for Maggie, that is huge. Now, if Maggie's arc is about clarity, then Cal's is about patience and perspective. And I think this episode does a really good job of showing why Cal's emotional journey mattered so much this season. He is not just there to be the good guy or the stable option. That would flatten him too much. What makes Cal work is that his version of love is built through presence, through consistency, through doing the work over time. And that kind of emotional logic matters because it gives this season a different kind of tension. Liam represents one kind of emotional pole, Cal represents another, but the finale smartly stops reducing that to romance mechanics and instead asks something much more meaningful. Can two people who have gone through confusion, distance, and uncertainty still choose to build something honest together once the noise settles? That is where Cal's scenes really land for me. He does not need giant speeches to matter. His emotional weight comes from how clearly he has been trying to understand where he stands, while still protecting his own sense of self. And by the end of the finale, it finally feels like he and Maggie are no longer standing in different emotional time zones. They have reached the same conversation. That does not erase the mess of the season, it gives the mess meaning, and that is a big difference. Now, I want to pause here for a second because this is where I think the finale gets something right that a lot of shows get wrong. It does not confuse resolution with simplification. The episode gives people movement. It gives them honesty. It gives them emotional payoff. But it does not pretend the season's pain did not happen. It does not try to rush us through forgiveness like a checklist. It lets the resolution feel earned through quiet scenes, through reconnection, through the sense that these people have actually changed enough to deserve a new chapter. That is why the emotional payoff works, not because it shocks you, because it feels right. Now, let's bring Liam into this because his role in the finale is really important. Even if the loudest emotional movement seems centered elsewhere, Liam has been one of the most complicated presences in season 4 because he carried unresolved history into a life Maggie was trying to rebuild. His existence in the story meant she could not hide from what she left unfinished, and while that naturally gave him romantic weight, I actually think the finale uses him in a smarter way. He becomes part of Maggie's emotional clarity rather than just the alternative path. That is a much stronger choice because if the show had turned the ending into a simple pick one moment, it would have cheapened what made the season emotionally complicated in the first place. Instead, Liam's presence helps define what Maggie needs to understand about herself. That keeps his role meaningful even if the story is ultimately moving in a different direction, and honestly, that is probably better for everyone. Now let's talk about the supporting characters, because one of the reasons this finale feels so much warmer than some earlier episodes is that it remembers the ensemble. This is not a one character world. It is a shared one, and episode 10 understands that. It gives people space. It gives them moments that feel meaningful even if they are not huge. Guidance, encouragement, small closures, emotional support, the sense that everyone in this town contributes to the shape of the story. That broader focus is one of the things that originally made Sullivan's Crossing resonate. The Crossing is not only a setting, it is a collective emotional environment. When the supporting cast matters, the show feels fuller. That is why Frank and Edna remain so crucial. These two are not just lovable background figures, they are emotional stabilizers. They represent continuity, warmth, the kind of lived-in wisdom that keeps the whole show from floating away into pure angst. Every time the series risks becoming too internally tangled, characters like Frank and Edna pull it back toward what the Crossing means at its best, and the finale uses them exactly how it should, not in some huge dramatic twist, just as grounding forces. That is often more valuable. In my opinion, they are the clearest embodiment of what this series is actually trying to protect. Community, sincerity, a slower kind of care that does not need to be flashy to matter. That is why their scenes always land. Now, one of the smartest things about episode 10 is how it frames community as the true resolution. Not romance alone, not personal success alone, community. That theme has always been sitting at the center of Sullivan's Crossing. But this finale pushes it back into focus in a way that feels deeply intentional. Through all the season's emotional complications, the final message becomes that people survive life's hardest moments more honestly when they let themselves be held by the people around them. That is why the town itself matters. The Crossing is not just a pretty backdrop. It is where people come to be seen more clearly, to heal more slowly, to fail without being entirely lost, to be reminded that belonging is not something you earn through perfection. It is something built through shared life. And that is the version of the show this finale reconnects us with. Now, let's talk about Season 4 as a whole for a second, because I think this finale also changes how some people may feel about the season overall. Will it fix every issue people had? If someone thought the pacing was uneven, or that too many storylines drifted for too long, this finale is not going to magically erase all of that. But what it does do is prove that the show still understands its own strongest identity. It proves that when it leans back into emotional community, character connection, and earned payoff, it can still hit exactly the way fans want it to. That matters going into Season 5 because finales do not just end stories. They shape anticipation for what comes next. And this one leaves behind the right kind of energy. Not confusion, not frustration, curiosity, hope, the feeling that the next chapter has room to grow naturally from where these people are now.
And that may be the best thing the finale accomplishes. It does not slam the door shut. It opens it carefully. So, where does that leave us? Maggie feels more certain than she has all season. Cal finally feels emotionally aligned with where the relationship is heading. Liam's role lands with meaning rather than melodrama. The supporting cast matters again. Frank and Edna continue to feel like the emotional soul of the series, and the Crossing itself once again feels like a place where people are connected rather than separated by the plot. That is why I think episode 10 succeeds. Not because it is the loudest finale, not because it goes for giant twists, because it remembers what Sullivan's Crossing is. A story about people trying to find their way through life's mess with the help of the people around them. And when the show remembers that, it becomes very easy to remember why audiences fell in love with it in the first place. Now, here is the big takeaway for me. This finale does not just resolve relationships, it restores tone, it restores atmosphere, it restores emotional trust between the show and the audience after a season that sometimes felt scattered. That is a huge achievement, and if Season 5 builds on this version of the show, the warmer, more connected, more emotionally grounded version, then I think it could come back stronger than ever. So overall, yes, I think Episode 10 improves the way people will look back on Season 4. Maybe not for everyone, but definitely for a lot of viewers, because even if the journey got messy, the finale reminded us that the destination still understands what made the trip worth taking. But anyway, that is my breakdown of Sullivan's Crossing Season 4, Episode 10, and why I think this finale reconnects the show to the heart that made it work in the first place. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments. Did this finale improve your overall opinion of Season 4, or do you still think the season had too many problems for one episode to fix? I will catch you in the next one.